Hey everyone, welcome back to Still Worth the Journey. I'm Jermaine, your host, and as always, I'm here to share some real life experiences and insight to help you on your mental health journey. I want to remind you that I'm not a trained therapist or counsellor, just someone who's been through a lot and wants to help others find their way, especially when the road gets tough. Today's episode is a deeply personal one. We are going to talk about grief and loss, something we all face at some point in our lives. Whether it's the death of a loved one, the end of a significant relationship, or even losing a job or home. Grief is a universal experience that affects us all in different ways. We'll explore the stages of grief, the different types of loss we might encounter, and how to find support during these incredibly difficult times. I'll also share some stories of resilience and healing, as well as practical advice on recognising when others are struggling with their grief and how to offer support. So if you're dealing with loss or want to be there for someone who is, this episode is for you. Let's start by understanding what grief is. Grief is a natural response to loss. It's the emotional suffering you feel when something or someone you love is taken away. The pain of loss can feel overwhelming, and you may experience all kinds of difficult and unexpected emotions, from shock and anger to disbelief, guilt, and profound sadness. The truth is, there's no right or wrong way to grieve, and everyone's experience is unique. One of the most well-known models of grief is the 5 stages of grief, introduced by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. These stages include denial. This is the first reaction where you might feel numb or in disbelief. It's a defense mechanism that helps us survive the initial shock. Number 2 is anger. As the masking effects of denial begin to wear off, reality and its pain re-emerge. You might feel frustrated, angry, and helpless. Number 3, bargaining. During this stage, you might dwell on what you could have done to prevent the loss. This often involves a lot of what ifs and if only statements. Number 4 is depression. Sadness sets in as you begin to fully process the loss. It's a deeper kind of grief where you might feel overwhelmed, helpless, and lonely. And for number 5 is acceptance. This final stage is about coming to terms with the loss. It doesn't mean you're okay with what happened, but you start to find a way to live with it and move forward. It's important to note that not everyone experiences all of these stages, and you might not go through them in a linear order. Some people might move through these stages quickly, while others might take years, and that's okay. I've experienced grief in different forms throughout my life, and I can tell you that it doesn't follow a predictable path. When I lost my nan, I found myself moving backs and forwards between anger and sadness, often feeling like I was taking 1 step forward and 2 steps back. But over time, I learned that grief isn't something you get over. It's something you learn to live with. Different types of loss. Grief doesn't just come from losing someone through death. There are many types of loss that can trigger a grief response, and it's important to acknowledge and validate all of them. Some examples include loss of a relationship, whether it's a breakup, divorce, or estrangement. The end of a significant relationship can feel like a death in its own right. The person is still alive, but the relationship as you knew it is gone. Loss of job or career. Losing a job can be devastating, especially if you were closely tied to your identity and it has provided financial security. Loss of health. Chronic illness or a sudden diagnosis can bring a profound sense of loss as you grieve the life you once had and the future that you imagined. Loss of a pet. Pets are family members and their loss can be just as painful as losing a human loved one. Loss of a dream. Sometimes we grieve for the life we thought we'd have, the dreams and plans that didn't come to fruition. Each of these types of loss can bring its own unique challenges and require different forms of support. When I lost my job a few years ago, I didn't realise at first that what I was feeling was grief. It was only later, after talking with others and reflecting on my emotions, that I understood I was mourning the loss of my sense of purpose and security. Understanding this helped me begin the healing process and find new paths forward. Finding support during grief. Grief can be incredibly isolating, but it's important to remember that you don't have to go through it alone. Finding support, whether from friends, family, or professionals, can make a huge difference. Here are some ways to find support. Talk to someone you trust. Sometimes just having someone to listen can be a huge relief. Whether it's a friend, a family member, or partner, sharing your feelings can help you process your grief. Join a support group. There are many support groups available for people who are grieving. These can be especially helpful because you'll be surrounded by others who understand what you're going through. Seek professional help. If your grief feels too overwhelming to handle on your own, consider talking to a therapist or counsellor. They can help you work through your emotions and provide strategies for coping. Take care of yourself. Grief takes a toll on both your mind and body, so it's important to take care of yourself. Make sure you're eating well, getting enough sleep, and staying physically active. These might seem like small things, but they can have a big impact on your ability to cope. Give yourself time. Healing through grief takes time, and there's no set timeline for when you should feel better. Be patient with yourself and allow yourself to feel whatever emotions come up. One of the things that helped me most during my times of grief was finding others who had been through something similar. Knowing that I wasn't alone in my pain made it feel more bearable. And over time, hearing stories of resilience and healing gave me hope that I could find a way through my own grief. Supporting others through grief. If you're on the other side of grief, trying to support someone you care about, it can be hard to know what to say or do. Here are some tips on how to offer support to someone who's grieving. Number 1, be there. Sometimes the best thing that you can do is just show up. Be present and available, even if you don't know the right words to say. Number 2 is to listen. Let them talk about their feelings without trying to fix or change anything. Just listening can be incredibly healing. Number 3, offer practical help. Grief can make even the simplest task feel overwhelming. Offer to help with things like cooking, cleaning, or running errands. Number 4, respect their process. Everyone grieves in their own way and on their own timeline. Avoid saying things like, "You should be over it by now," or "It's time to move on." Instead, let them know it's okay to grieve however they need to. Number 5, check in regularly. Grief doesn't end after the funeral or a few weeks later. Continue to check in with your loved one over time to see how they're doing. When my friend lost his family member, I struggled to find the right words. But what I learned is that sometimes there are no right words. Just being there, listening, and offering support in practical ways made all the difference. Stories of resilience and healing. Grief is one of the hardest things that we go through, but it's also something that can lead to profound personal growth and resilience. I've met people who, after experiencing unimaginable loss, found a way to rebuild their lives in ways they never thought possible. They didn't get over it, their grief, but they learned to carry it with them in a way that didn't stop them from living. One of the most powerful stories I've heard is from a friend who lost her partner in a tragic accident. She went through years of deep, painful grief, but over time she found new ways to honour her partner's memory while also allowing herself to move forward. She started a foundation in his name and found a new sense of purpose through helping others. Her story reminds me that even in our darkest times, there's always a way to find light. I hope these stories remind you that no matter how deep your grief feels right now, there's a path forward. It won't be easy and it won't happen overnight, but you can find a way through this. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. Grief is a journey, and like any journey, it's full of ups and downs. There will be days when you feel like you're making progress and days when it feels like the pain is as fresh as ever. But no matter where you are on your journey, I want you to know that it's okay to feel what you're feeling. It's okay to take your time and it's okay to ask for help. If you or someone you know is struggling with grief, please reach out to someone you trust. And if you need additional support, here are some resources that can help. Cruise Bereavement Support. You can contact them on 0808 808 1677. Samaritans at 116 123. They're available 24/7. Mind 0300 123 3393. The Compassionate Friends Support after the death of a child 0345 123 2304. Child Bereavement UK 0800 02 88840. These organisations are there to offer guidance and support when you need it most. Thank you for joining me today on Still Worth the Journey. I hope this episode has given you some comfort and understanding. Whether you're grieving yourself or supporting someone who is, remember, you're not alone in this. There's always someone out there who cares, and no matter what you're going through, you are still worth the journey. So until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. You've been listening to Still Worth the Journey with Jermaine. Join me next week as we continue exploring life's challenges, finding hope and reminding ourselves that it's all still worth the journey.